Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin.
Hello, everybody. This is The Wildlife with Tabitha Stevens, and I'm Gary Orona. We're sitting in the Jeep today. We're actually out on location, so if the audio sounds a little bit different, it's because we're inside the Jeep today, because we are...
Location scouting.
Yes, for Lake Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
And when we arrived, the weather's terrible. It's really, really windy, and it's been raining a little bit. The idea was to pull some gear out and do a podcast out here on location while we were location scouting. But somebody forgot the windscreen for the microphone, and so we can't do it outside because it's windy. And so we're in the Jeep.
Okay, but for those who are listening and not actually watching on YouTube, I'm not the one who forgot the windscreen. I'm just saying. And he's shaking his head. No, but you got to say it.
No, you're right. The guilty party here is me. When I was packing, I brought a still camera system, I brought a video system, I brought the podcast system. My mind was cluttered with just too much information, and I forgot the windscreen. So we're in the Jeep. We're in a ghost town, like it's an old ghost ranch. In fact, we call it Ghost Ranch.
Yes, we do.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're hunting for locations. And this is a really super awesome spot. So the subject for today of this podcast is tenacity, perseverance. So enduring despite the obstacles that might jump in our way. So this is a perfect day for this.
That's what I was saying, because Gary said, well, maybe we shouldn't shoot this. Maybe we shouldn't do it.
Right.
And I said, let's just do it in the car.
Right.
And then he didn't want to do it in the car, which I kind of get, because it's like we're in the Jeep. Like, okay, how exciting. But you know what? It doesn't matter.
But this is perfectly apropos for us, right?
Yes,
like we're constantly having to make adjustments.
It's an adventure.
Yeah. And when you're doing adventures all the time like we do, you know, you've got to be incredibly flexible, because the weather is a huge component. And more often than not, it's not going to cooperate.
No.
And so despite what obstacles might be thrown in our path, we have to pursue this. We have to continue. We have to be tenacious.
Yes.
And a lot of folks ask us sometimes, say, oh God, you guys are so lucky, you know, you've got this great life of adventure. And
well, which we do, though. We do. I mean, you can't say we don't, but it's not easy. Like, everybody thinks it's so easy for us.
Right. Well, I think that a lot of people too, one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this is a lot of people are hunting for some sort of magical ingredient, some sort of magic wand that they can wave around that will make, you know, their lives more successful, more interesting, more impassioned, all of these things. And, you know, I sort of in my talk all the time, constantly, I constantly use the word tenacity, and I constantly use the word perseverance, because that's really what it all boils down to. Because it doesn't matter what projects we do, that it's some point in any given project, be it film, TV, photography, there are going to be some things launched your directions that seem to be insurmountable. And this is where tenacity comes in. Yep. So those of you who are, you know, hunting for the strong, powerful ingredients to becoming successful in what you do over the long haul, my word I always use is tenacity. You just have to keep doing it no matter what missiles get launched your direction. Right?
I'm sorry, I just keep looking at the clouds, and, you know, it's so awesome. There is some sunlight obviously coming through, but the clouds out here are just, it's amazing. It's so pretty. It really is. It's just the wind, and then it could rain. I mean, we might hear it, you know, it might hit the car or something.
At some point.
But it is pretty cool out here, I got to admit.
I'm going to ask you a question in a second, but before we do that, let me explain why I'm wearing these big, giant sunglasses right now. Because some people might be thinking, who are watching it on YouTube, if you're watching it on YouTube, you know, you've got beautiful Tabitha sitting next to me, and you've got Gary over here with a hat on and sunglasses. The reason is I just had a little surgery for a little tiny piece of skin cancer that was up near my eyeball. So I've got a big black eye right now, and it's good. The cancer's gone. I'm all clear. They cut it all out, but I've got a big black spot under my eye, and it's not exactly attractive.
So he's not being a dick and trying to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to be so cool wearing these fucking sunglasses. No, he actually has this black eye, and I don't blame the guy. Look at that face. I love the face. Okay, anyway.
Crazy. So what I wanted to talk about, and I brought this up to Tabitha yesterday, and we both agreed it'd be a good subject, is this idea of tenacity, tenaciousness. So what are some examples? What are we talking about when we're saying, well, the path to success is tenacity? And what it basically boils down to, like I said before, is whatever gets thrown your way, you've got to be adaptable and get through it, and you have to keep doing it. Whatever your project is in life, whatever your career choice is, whatever it is, be it artistic, be it mechanical, be it whatever it is, it's all about perseverance. If you can persevere and you can endure regardless of what gets launched at you, that is the magic component. That's what matters.
Okay.
So, with that said, what I would like to do is ask Miss Tabitha.
Ask? You're going to ask
I forgot
me?
the K. Ask Miss Tabitha Stevens to
Yes.
tell us a story or two about instances in her career or life that basically some fairly serious obstacles, some rocks in the path were tossed in, and she had to figure out another way, a route around it, and continue down that path. So with that said, can you think of anything off the top of your head?
Oh yeah, there's one that's it's a personal thing. It's nothing really to do with filming per se. But before I was married to Gary, I had another husband before that, and one before that, and one before that. I know. I've been married 4 times.
How long is this list?
Stop. I've been married 4 times. Gary is the 4th and final, I swear. But my third husband, he and I had a pretty messy divorce. And right as we were going through the divorce, now remember, I was only married to this guy for 5 months. Seriously, 5 months. And I remember him saying to me, "You're only a porn star. You're nothing. You will never be anything. You'll never be successful. That's just who you are." And that pissed me off just a little bit. So what I did was I became even more successful. I went on the Howard Stern show many times after he had told that to me to my face that I was going to be this loser pretty much. But I've done that.
Did that light your fire? Would you say
that lit my fire big time?
That having someone say to you, you're going to be nothing but a porn star, just sort of, instead of letting that, so in other words, instead of letting that sink you into depression, instead of letting that pull you down and becoming kind of a boat anchor, you said, all right, you feel the way, watch this.
Right, kiss my ass. Now then I don't sugarcoat that. That drives me batty. Although I have to say, it's not that I was depressed about my career in porn. I had a great career and I'm very, very, very happy. It's just when somebody sits there and tells you, well, this is all you're going to ever do or all you're going to ever be, and they just try to like push you in a little hole, let's say, and be like, okay, that's it, screw you. No. I have a really hard time with that, and that pisses me off. So that, instead of turning it into, mean anger, let's say, and then taking it out through the court system, I took it out in other ways. Like I just took that anger and turned it into more of a positive, and then said, hey, you know what? I am going to be super successful because you're an asshole. And that's what I did.
So you took negative.
I did.
And you transformed it into positive. And I think that that's a really important thing.
Totally.
I mean, many years ago, I was shooting a whole series of music videos, karaoke music videos, for Toshiba EMI in Japan. And we were shooting all of them in the States. And they would send me a lot of videos to shoot. I had a really great little team of guys, and we would travel around and shoot these great visual videos for these things. This is going back decades. And it didn't matter what project that we were on, the obstacles arise. Once you're on that train, I always put it this way, when you're in production, it's like jumping on a train. And once the train's rolling down the tracks, there aren't any brakes. You can't stop. So no matter what happens, you've got to be able to adapt, and you've got to be able to transform your day based upon what happens. And more often than not, you can't predict what's going to happen, especially with us shooting in these wild, crazy locations.
It's almost, I would say 99% weather, don't you think?
Yeah,
in our instance, it's weather for sure. I mean, you're totally
right. And so and we would reach points where we were filming particular projects, and maybe an actor wouldn't show up, or a location fell through literally the day of shooting. Well, you've got to be able to move, especially if you've got 10 crew members and you got 4 or 5 actors, and you can't just send everybody home. You've got to deal with it. Now, here's a good example of that in a little bit of a different way, and that is that we were filming The Erotic Traveler. It was a project we were doing with HBO, and it played on Cinemax for a long time. And it was a series, and we were shooting in Hawaii. And we had gotten permits to film on any of the beaches that we wanted to in Kauai. And what happened was the islands are small and word spreads. Well, at that particular moment in time, there was a huge problem with crystal meth, and locally they call it ice. So there were quite a few locals who were hopped up on ice, and it's a really tragic story, the drug abuse and all of that. At any rate, we were filming down on a beach one day, and up above where our vans were with all of our gear, it was a little bit of a hike to get down to the beach. We heard a big commotion, and I went up above to see what was going on. And basically what happened was a local who was on ice, on crystal meth, and he was whacked out of his brain, was harassing us and launching a lot of verbal missiles and threatening and all kinds of things. Now, I don't know if it was that he wanted money or what the deal was. At any rate, what happened was, and I'll make this story, I'll cut this down quite a bit, but word spread, and pretty soon we were showing up at our locations that we were allowed to be and everything, and we were getting harassed by these guys on ice. And I got to be completely ridiculous. So I had to make a sort of a rash decision. You've got to be able to move. You've got to be tenacious. You've got to finish your project. And so what I did was, okay, get on the phone. I talked to my one of my line producers, and I said, look, get on the phone, call the talent that's due to fly out in a couple of days, have them hold up. We're going to move the production to Los Angeles. And which seemed very, very rash, because the locations were supposed to be in Bali. We were shooting Hawaii to look like Bali.
Right.
So what we did, but I knew that if we were very creative and very clever, we could build some great looking sets in Hollywood, which we did for the interiors. And as long as we shot a lot of B-roll, a lot of exterior locations and establishing shots in Hawaii to double as Bali, it would work. And sure enough, kaboom, it worked. So there's a situation where we could have lost dearly, and we could have ended up in a really bad situation. But instead, through creativity and through, tenacity, we stuck it out. We raced around the island, shot as many of these B-roll shots as we could, and it worked beautifully. And I'll never forget, when I sent the first edit to HBO, they would send us notes back, and then we would make little adjustments in the edit, and then ultimately we would reach a finished product. Well, on this particular episode, which was called Burying It in Bali, it's called Burying It in Bali, I got a message back from the executives at HBO, and they said it was the best episode of its kind they had ever seen. So, perfect example of not allowing these circumstances to get in the way, and just regardless marching through it.
But they never knew that we didn't go to Bali.
They thought we shot
it in Bali,
in Indonesia. Right? They really did.
Yeah, they did. So it's like, wow, like, okay, cool. But well, how about when we shot Egypt?
Oh yeah.
Yes,
we also doubled. That was Utah. So we shot an episode which required quite a few locations in Egypt. Believe it or not. Like
with camels, pyramids, the whole thing. Palm trees.
And we through absolute hard-nosed diligence found locations that we figured out ways we could double. We found a guy outside of Moab, out in the hills, who actually owned camels. Yes. And so we brought in fake plastic palm trees.
Yes.
We have plastic palm trees.
Yeah.
That we would line up in the background, and we made sure they dropped out of focus just enough that you couldn't tell that they were fake palm trees.
Yeah.
And
it looked great.
We shot it in Utah.
You would never know.
Yeah.
You would never know.
So another good example of just when the shit's really hitting the fan, sticking it out and remaining determined.
Right, and being creative too, because that took creativity to come up with, the palm trees, with, finding a location with the camels. I mean, some people probably couldn't even think of that. Oh man, what are we going to do? Oh, how are we going to shoot that? Let's just use stock footage. No, we don't want to use stock footage. We want to create our own. Okay, anyway.
Do you remember the time? So we were also shooting a show called Exposure.
Yes.
And basically it was like a documentary. It's behind the scenes as we were shooting a bunch of nudes, actually, for books and some programming with Tabitha.
I was naked?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
It was, she fought me on that. No, she didn't. And we happened to be shooting in the middle of the summer in the deserts around Las Vegas. And this was...
I'm trying to think which one.
It was the one where it was literally the hottest day.
Was it like 120
in like
that day?
Decade.
It was crazy hot. It was so hot.
Right. And the projection, the weather prediction was it would get to be at least 120 degrees.
Yeah, it felt like it was.
And
it's hard to breathe. It was that hot. It was hard to breathe. There wasn't any wind, right? It was just sunny. And you know who the makeup artist was on that set?
You. Right.
So yeah.
So tell them what we did to solve the problem. Because when it's that hot, and we were in an area that had virtually no shade in the desert at 120 degrees.
Well, what we did, I mean, we just opened up the back of the Land Rover, and then that's what we did originally. And then I was, applying my makeup. And remember, I had this big, giant metal case filled with, eyeshadows, base, lipsticks. They're all just melting. So I'm trying to take all this stuff and put it in the cooler, with ice cubes. And I'm trying to keep my makeup from melting. And most of it did melt anyway. But so we tried to use that as shade, like behind the vehicle with the, the backup. So we could, use it as a little bit of shade. And then did we also take the tent out too? We took the paracord.
No, what we did was we did that for about an hour. We put Tabitha inside the Land Rover and tried, but it started to get really too hot.
It was so hot.
And so we found we were in a wash. We found a little overhang.
So there's a little
tiny overhang. So there's a little bit of shade. We put her in a little beach chair. We put a cooler next to her. And basically what we did was I said, okay, look, you need to sit here, and it might be a few hours.
Oh, it was.
Because we need to wait out the heat of the day, because it was really terrible. It was incredibly hot.
Yeah, it was.
And so while she did that and stayed underneath this overhang.
We were with our assistant, Michael Boland. So Michael was with us as well. So
he
Michael and I
with
stayed with me, so I wasn't by myself. Because that would have been weird too, if I had to sit by myself while you went off to find the place we were going to shoot. And you were
it was safe.
You were in a crappy mood that day.
Well, I was in a horrible mood because I get, very clear visions in my head, shots that I want, and I was losing hour after hour of potential shooting time because it was so unbearably miserable. Now, we could have just packed it up and left.
But we were there.
Right. But what I said was we're going to stick this out. And so what we did was we put Tabitha under the shade for a while. I marched off.
At least 3 hours.
Yeah, she was stuck there for about 3 hours. I marched off out into the wilds to hunt for all the locations. And then what we decided to do is to compact the full day of shooting into basically the last 2 hours of the day. So it's still hot as hell, but at least I knew that the sun would be dropping enough that the angle wouldn't be so brutal. And at the end of the day, you get a lot of atmospheric distortion in the sky. That's why shots at sunset can be so mesmerizing sometimes. It's that angle shooting through all the pollutants and everything. And that's what we did. So we basically saved it for the last 2 hours where it was a little bit more tolerable. And
it was still hot. I mean, seriously.
It wore on all of our nerves.
Oh, wait. And that day, too. Okay. Because at that time, my hair was black. I had dyed it this jet black color. And remember, I had put some hair extensions in there, too. So, I have to be ready. Even when we're walking to the location, I want to be ready to go. So I have all this makeup on my face. It's melting to my face. I have like these little fake hair clips in my hair, and I'm sweaty, and it was just gnarly. It was just that was That was a little gnarly. You
But
have
we
to
stuck
admit.
it out.
We did.
The point being, it was another example of a situation where we could have very easily said, to hell with this.
Exactly.
We're going to suffer. Let's go home. But
we didn't.
But we didn't. We stuck it out and we suffered.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yes, we did.
But at the end of the day, we got a great looking show. And I think that, that's one thing that I've sort of expressed a lot of times because, as we all know, I'm sort of notorious for taking talent and crew into really, really ridiculously savage locations. And when the going gets tough, what I'll usually try to explain to the talent, because it's usually the talent that's complaining, the actors and actresses, is I'll say, look, suffering is temporary. This is all very temporary. At the end of the day, what matters is what goes up on the big screen. And, years from now, when you're sitting in a nice, warm, comfortable place and you're drinking your coffee or tea or whatever, and you're watching your show, watching what you did, you might remember the suffering a tiny bit, but what you're really going to be planted and really focused on is what the show is. And so at the end of the day, that's what matters. And so that when I was talking about perseverance and tenacity earlier, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You have to play the long game and see the long vision. Yeah, you might be suffering now for a few hours, for a full day, whatever, but if you stick it out, a lot of times you can sort of spin those conditions to your advantage and to become incredibly upset in your life about the things that pop out that you don't expect is silly. And the trick is to learn to see it, acknowledge it. Do not let it allow negativity into your day and continue. Just get through it and hopefully get through with some smiles.
And on that note, I must add that this guy, I'm like, this guy, he gets angry too. So it's not just the talent, it's not just that, but that day especially, oh my gosh, fuck this, I don't want to shoot this, da 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 da. Now we did, we were we finally hiked to this location, and we're ready to shoot, me and the hair clips and all this other crap in a loincloth, this whole thing. Anyway, and Gary, didn't the wind kick in too?
Oh, the wind kicked
all
in.
This crazy
our
stuff.
Reflectors were flying away like flying saucers.
And it was remember, it was hot that day too. So then you had this hot wind that came in out of freaking nowhere. And Gary starts, he was going off. So this is where I come in to save the day. Not really, I didn't save the day. But in a way I did kind of save the day because I stayed for our shoot. I didn't complain too much. I mean, I did a little bit.
She didn't complain really much at all.
Not that day.
And she had this top on. It was like that
pissed me off, yes.
It was like an animal skin bikini top, but it didn't have any way to connect below. It just draped over her boobs.
Mm-hmm.
And when the wind picked up later on, these things were flopping all over the place. So our PG segment became, an R-rated segment really fast as her breasts were exposed. We were trying to keep these damn things down.
Oh, it wasn't working. So that kind of upset me a little bit. But what I like to do, especially when I know Gary's like pissy about something, and it happens, again, the elements, people, it's the elements. I will do something completely ridiculous, silly, to try and make him laugh and lift his spirits. And he didn't even know what I was doing. I had done this thing where I had this it was like a little animal head.
It's a skull.
A skull on a stick. And I took the little mouth and I started opening it, and I'm like, oh, Gary, I started talking about Gary, and then I was saying how mean Gary was that day with the little head, and then finally, I made Gary laugh. He looked over, but at first he was really pissy. Remember that? Mm-hmm. But when he starts to edit it, then all right, so we're all done, okay, and he gets a little bit better, as far as his attitude adjustment now. And then when he edits the footage, he's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this was going on. Like, it was so funny. It really, you gotta admit.
It was good.
That's how I do that.
But you make a good point, and this is really for everybody out there, is that, we have faced, and we've got books of material, faced some of the most ridiculous and insane scenarios you can imagine. And, the secret to it is just get through it. Keep doing it, and don't give up.
But have fun too. So I'm going to stop you there because it's, yes, you're not going to give up, but at least kind of get excited too. Because
well, that's where you put the humor into it.
You got it.
Like
you got
did
to
in
like
that
lighten it up
instance.
because
Yeah, it
sometimes
helps.
things get too intense, and that's when people give up.
And it's going to happen no matter what
Yes.
you do.
Yeah.
You can plan until you can plan every possible variable for months ahead of time.
Yep.
And I guarantee you,
It
and
never
I
turns
have
out
shot,
like you want.
I've shot hundreds of projects, and I've lost count. And there has never been a project that there wasn't some point in that project where I thought, Jesus, this sucks. This is horrendous. How the hell is this happening? Man, I just want to like walk away. And that happens all the time. And again, the secret is just keep doing it. So you make a really important point, and that is humor. Add humor to the situation. What are you doing? Tabitha just pulled her top up.
No, I not exposed,
Almost,
but
right.
no, because I'm looking in this video monitor, and when I sit like this, it looks like I had this weird belly, and I don't. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh no, there's my abs. So I just wanted to make sure they were still there.
So throw humor at whatever.
That was funny.
Throw humor. It is.
I know. I'm very funny.
Throw humor at whatever your current hell is because it will pass.
Yes.
Okay, so I was shooting a movie.
No way.
At the Amargosa Opera House years and years and years ago. And I went out to the location early, and my director of photography, I asked him, I had a Jaguar that we were using. It was mine. We were using it in the show as a picture car as well. And I asked him to drive it out for me. So it was a big crew. We were shooting on 35 millimeter film, big unit. Late one night, the night that he was driving my Jaguar in to meet with us, it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and there was a pounding on my door, the motel room door.
Pounding. Do you hear that? Wind is pounding the car.
I don't think they can hear this. It's pretty.
I don't know. But I'm just, no, that's cool. I mean, again.
Yeah. It is really
We're
getting
continuing.
windy.
Okay, no, just keep going. Tell me the story. This is a good story.
I know, but you stopped it.
Well, you can
cut
continue.
Me off. Okay.
Oh my! Somebody needs to. Somebody needs to cut Gary off sometimes.
The winds outside are about 30 miles per hour at this point.
Okay, no, go finish.
At any rate, so I get a pounding on my motel room door, and I'm thinking, oh God, what? So it's my director of photography. They've arrived, great. Except that when I opened the door, he had one of the most sullen, horrified looks on his face you can imagine. And he said, we have a problem. And I said, oh boy, what happened? Well, what had happened is you approach this motel. Now, this location is in the middle of the desert. There's literally nothing there except for an old motel in the Opera House. It's over 100 years old, completely defunct. There's no street lights of any kind. Well, as you approach the town, there's a 90-degree turn in the middle of the desert that takes you into the town. Well, as he was blasting along, and he had a couple of his camera assistants in the back seat with him, and some gear in the trunk. As they were blasting along in my Jag, they didn't catch a wind of this 90-degree turn until the last minute. So he had to slam the brakes on, swerved around, and he crashed my car into a historic building, an old historic garage across the street from the motel. Totaled the car. I mean, it was completely, the whole front end was gone. Well, so it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm at the door. He's telling me what happened. He's sad as hell. He literally thinks I'm going to fire him on the spot. And my first words to him were, are you guys okay? And he said, no, we're all good. There's not even a scratch. Those Jags are awesome. We're fine. We're good. But your car's done. It's over. It's totaled. And I was like, good. That's cool. And I was like, okay, let's go take a look at it. And he's looking at me like I'm a lunatic. Like, Gary's not even mad. And so we walk out and we look at it, and I see it, and it is just demolished. And so I'm stoked that these guys are in good condition. I'm like, thank God nobody got hurt, And I said, all right, cool. I kind of patted him on the back, and I said, well, I guess we'll just have to leave the car here for now. And I want you guys, let's get your stuff in, get you guys checked in, get you to sleep, and you guys need some rest. You've had a tough night. And he looked at me and he said to me, I'm not fired? And I said, well, why would I fire you, dude? I love you. And he's like, oh my God. He said, I could have sworn you were going to be so pissed. And I said, it's a car.
Shit happens, it does.
It's a car. We got a show to shoot. I'm excited about shooting this show. Tomorrow's going to be a great day. Let's get you guys some sleep. We got a big day tomorrow. And he was just perplexed, completely perplexed, because I didn't allow that to even affect my mood at all. My thought process is they're here, cool, we're gonna shoot the show, it's gonna be a great show. Yeah, the jag's a mess, but what the hell. So that jag, for the entire shooting, which was 2 or 3 weeks there, sat there. Because remember, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Right, no,
so
it is.
Every day filming, and we would drive right by it and wave at it and all this. The old jag, it just was a dead lump of metal crashed into the side of this historic building, and it just stayed there, But that's another good example of just not letting anything stop you, because emotionally it could have messed me up, but I'm like, well, what? It's a big piece of metal. I don't care.
Right. But here's the funny thing. So we took my niece Kelsey out to Death Valley in that area, and we came across is it Amargosa? That's how you say it. The Amargosa.
Yeah.
And Kelsey was all excited. She wanted to see this place. So we showed her. And then we showed her where the jag
had crashed.
And there's still a big old, dent in the wall.
You can see where they tried to re-stucco.
They did a horrible job. It did not work.
Super obvious.
Oh, I know. Kelsey was funny because she's like, "Oh my gosh, it is still there,"
After all these years. Can you recount a story while filming or on a project where something just crazy happened and it almost shut you down, but you're like, nope, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep shooting, that sort of a thing?
Well, on an adult film set, there was a time where, and again, I liked working with a lot of the directors in the business. They were all pretty cool. And this one I used to work with quite a bit. And he was known for having everybody on set for a long day. Like, we're talking really long. You get there early.
Long? How long?
Okay, let's put it this way. I'm going to tell you the story. Wait. That day in particular, that shoot, okay, first of all, I got there, I want to say at 6 in the morning, got into makeup. I had 2 scenes that day for this film. And they were on a set. And the last scene of the day was where this giant papier-mâché penis comes through a wall or window into our little space house.
Say that again, a giant
papier-mâché penis. Yes, that squirted milk, right? So I had done a sex scene before that scene had to take place. And I was getting made up and ready for the next scene. Well, it's already after midnight. And an hour goes by. 2 hours go by. I want to say it was almost 3 o'clock in the morning at that point. It was freezing cold in the studio. They couldn't get the milk to pump out of, they use these hoses, out of the hoses through the penis to, water us down with the milk. So here's this other actress and I in this house in these these lycra spandex bodysuits with the holes where the boobs are cut out and where the bottom part is all cut out as well. And so we're freezing cold, and finally we get this thing going. Freezing cold milk is on us. Oh, sorry. I'm over the mic. Freezing cold milk is on us, and it was just a mess. But to make matters worse, I'm allergic to milk. Okay? So I had said to them before we shot this, I can get milk on me. I just don't want to, drink it or have it in me. And guess what? It got everywhere, and let's just say, went to the doctor the next day after that. So there's a hazard of the job. But you know what? Even though we were all tired, and we did complain, I'm not going to say but it wasn't like diva-like complaining, but man, that was a long, so you're there at 6 in the morning till 3 in the morning?
Right, long day.
As an actor. I mean, that's wow.
You
But
can't stop, right?
No, I mean,
you have to keep shooting.
Even though you want to be done, because come on, I had already shot a sex scene, so I'm tired as it is, and it's getting, later and later and later. And when I would shoot, I wouldn't like to eat too much before a scene. Because you don't want to be bloated
for obvious reasons.
Well, no, not for that. Gary. No, I'm just saying for bloatation reasons,
Launching
really.
in the middle of the
Oh
scene.
my
Whoa,
God,
where did that come from?
Oh my gosh. No, but I'm just, for bloating and things. So, during that time, I would just eat little bits of things. I wouldn't have a full meal. So, can you imagine how hungry I was at that time? So, I done a scene.
Were
I'm tired.
Were they feeding you well? Were they feeding you anything?
No, it was typical porn set.
Well, you can't
crap.
say porn set because any film set, you know, there's a lot
Well, it
of
depends.
like low budget films.
On low budget, yes, where
you're eating, you know, Cheetos.
There's kind of
that's dinner.
Yeah, it's more like, you know, they had the little veggie tray and things like that. It wasn't anything completely substantial, but it worked, I guess.
Right.
And, you know, and I like meat. That sounded so horrible after talking about a porn set.
Protein. You need your protein.
I like how you turned that. That was nice. Good save, Gary. But yeah, so, you know, and because I get low, so I have hypoglycemia, so I need that protein, and yeah, so.
But you stuck through it. You got it. Probably a good show. That's actually funny. Big giant paper mache penis, which is shooting milk out. Mm-hmm. That's hilarious.
Yes.
That's wild. Well, that's another good example. And again, the whole point that I wanted to bring to the podcast is you know, Tabitha's story is a good example of that. Is that you've got to be tough too. You know, to be tenacious and to persevere, and sometimes you've got to really, really be tough, and you've got to not allow your mind to interfere with what you're doing. And so for so many of you out there who are trying a new job, a new career, or trying to follow your dreams or whatever, you know, the biggest chunk of advice that we can give you is keep doing it no matter what. Just don't let anything get in your way. How about we share one more story and then we'll call it one. I thought of something that I know I've told you this story, Tabitha's story, a bunch of times, but I was filming in Guatemala. This is 15, 20, probably about 20,
I thought we were stopping
20 years ago. And
is this the final story?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
I thought we were stopping what? Just then?
Oh, I don't know what we were doing.
No.
Okay.
So years ago, I was filming in Guatemala. We were shooting 2 little low-budget movies back to back, and we were up in Lago Atitlan, which is a big, giant lake in the middle of Guatemala, up in the highlands. So for those of you that want to get kind of a sense of how big this lake is, think, you know, bigger than like Lake Tahoe in California and Nevada. It's a big, huge lake. Well, we had gotten these local Mayan fishermen to take us out on boats to film in the middle, literally in the middle of the lake, these scenes that we were doing out there. And about halfway through the shooting, midday, we notice a giant black wall of clouds coming at us. And when I mean wall, I mean a wall like I've never seen before. It looked like all hell was headed our way, and headed our way fast. We're on these little fishing boats with no cover whatsoever in the middle of the lake, and basically a squall, a zephyr, a giant wind came up, and this wall of a storm cell was headed right at us. Well, quickly the fishermen realized what was happening, and so they, you know, fired up the boats, and we started to scramble and race across this lake as fast as we could to try to get to some shelter. Well, we didn't get out of there in time. We got nailed. And so what they did was they pulled out these tarps, you know, those like little blue tarps you get like at, you know, Ace or Home Depot or whatever.
Okay. And I wasn't on the shoot, by the way, just so everybody knows. This is a Gary thing.
They had a few of those on the boats. And so actors, crew members, we all huddled underneath these blue tarps while this cell just exploded over the top of us. Eventually we got into this little harbor, and we just hung out in the middle of the harbor on the water in the boats waiting for this to pass. But as it passed, we're getting drenched because these tarps just aren't doing much good, and we are just getting slaughtered. And
wasn't the actress really upset? There's 2 people that were really an actor and an actress.
Yeah, there were 3.
They were very upset though, right?
3 actors were super upset, and 2 girls and 1 guy, and they were pissed. They hated me. Now, to make matters worse, once we finished, the plan was we had to get the actors out of there because the next morning they had to catch a flight back to Los Angeles. So the idea was we were going to transport them across the lake in these little boats where there were vans waiting to pick them up and shuttle them to the airport. Okay, so we just finished filming, wet, miserable, the whole deal. And they've got to jump in another boat to go back across the lake to get to the shuttle. They were pissed. I remember one of the girls that was pissed, just screaming at me. I was the devil, it was really, really bad, right? And the guy was pretty pissed too. He wasn't screaming as much, but he was pissed. And then there was another actor that was there, and he was cool.
You said there were 2 girls.
There was one. Doesn't matter. There was one girl
okay.
and 2 guys.
Okay, 1 girl's 2. Okay.
Yeah, I think. Okay, I'm mixing that up.
Okay.
It was 1 girl and 2
Right.
guys because one of the guys, one of the girls were pissed, and the other
Right.
guy
was
his name is Todd. I haven't talked to him in years, but Todd, if you by any reason happen to, listen, watch the podcast, man, dude, you rock. I fucking love you, man. You're awesome. Anyway, Todd came up to me right before he got in the boat because the 3 of them were going to be shuttled back across the lake again. He came up to me and he said, Gary, he said, dude, he said, thank you. And he gave me a big hug and he said, you have given me an adventure I will remember for the rest of my life. And I thought, fucking A, man. Here's a guy who gets it, who understands that it is through these kinds of situations, this kind of adversity, that we end up with the best stories ever. Now, to finish the story, and then I'll explain why I told you this particular story. Years later, I bumped into the girl, the actress that had been in the boat and had been screaming at me, right? And so years later, I bumped into her, and she came up to me and was nice as pie, and she said, Gary, that was so awesome. I have told this story so many times over Christmas and holidays and blah, blah, blah. That was so cool. And I thought to myself under my breath, as she was telling me this, you suck. You gave me so much grief over this. And now, unnecessary grief. And now, only now, years later, do you realize how awesome, despite the discomfort of those few hours, how amazing that situation and that adventure was. And so the reason I bring this up is that, again, for those of you out there who are struggling with something, who need empowerment, who need advice, the number one thing that Tabitha and I can tell you is keep doing it,
keep going,
regardless of what comes at you, because, if nothing else, you're going to end up with a life of great experiences and adventures and stories.
And memories. Not just that, you have the memories. Don't take anything for granted either. Like we just sit it back and think, or we can bitch. Let's say we can bitch and complain about, the weather sucks or that sucks.
It's windy
whatever.
outside.
And yeah, it does. It does. I'm not going to lie. Like today we're like, shit. We can't, do the podcast in the place we wanted to do, but we're still doing it.
Yeah, you adapt.
And that's just what it is. Guys, you have one life to live.
Yeah.
You have this one time in this body, on this earth. Fucking enjoy it.
Yeah, go for it.
Enjoy it.
Go for it.
Totally.
And be
Ooh, did you hear that?
flexible. And was that thunder?
I think it was thunder.
Be flexible. You can do it. You can do it. And there is no magic wand you can wave to be successful with what you do. I'm trying. There's no such thing as overnight success with what you do. It's all about tenacity. Just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And eventually, you will hit that critical mass and boom, in some form or another, in some way, either monetarily or spiritually or whatever, you will be successful with it. Why are you touching my chin and squeezing my face?
Because I love that face. Sorry, I just like to, I make like this little butt with his chin. Have fun. Come on, admit. See, these are the things we do when we're in like those weird situations like I was talking about, where it's like a little tense. I'm not tense right now, I'm just listening to Gary, but look how cute that is. It's
when
like
you're
a
with
little
Tabitha Stevens, no matter how insane the circumstances become, she's going to do something nutty, and it's going to break the ice, and it usually helps the day.
Yeah.
Not 100% all the time, but usually.
Hey! All right, with that, Gary, let's just put tape over his mouth for a minute. Thank you guys for listening to The Wildlife. I keep wanting to call it The Wild Side. Sorry if I do that and I pause because I don't know. It's that Motley Crue song.
You don't even know your own show?
I know. Well, really? I didn't even name my own show. It's our show. He named it.
That's
and
true.
Sometimes I get a little confused. Anyway. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to play with his face a little bit more. So we'll check in with you soon. All right. Oh,
be sure to
subscribe
to
this podcast.
And your website is?
I'm not done.
Okay.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And that would be Tabitha Stevens TV. And that's on YouTube. My Twitter, @Miss Tab Stevens. And it's the same for Instagram, is @Miss Tab Stevens.
And my professional website is GaryOrona.com. You can see the wild and amazing photographic works that we do, and you can actually purchase fine art prints at SavageTerritory.com. And then my Twitter is Gary_Orona. And on Instagram, I am Gary Orona Photo.
He just makes it so hard on himself.
I think we covered it all.
No, but what about our Vimeo channel? We also have a Vimeo channel with on-demand shows.
And this is where you see the uncensored versions of everything we do, and it's worth it, trust me, because it's Tabitha Stevens, damn it.
Oh, no, not just that. No, but they're cool shows.
And she rocks.
And again, it's not like adult film stuff. This is just, there's some TNA in there and silliness, but that's pretty much,
it's just
and there's some seriousness too.
Uncensored.
But it's awesome. Our channel on Vimeo is awesome. Do you know that? Is that under?
I do. It's Vimeo.com/Tabitha TV. So Tabitha TV is your official Vimeo handle, and that's where you where you're going to see the uncensored stuff. So go see some of those programs. All right.
Okay. Bye, guys.